Welcome to Sola Church Online.
I'm Alan Rigg. This is my wife, Miranda Landers, and together we lead Sola Church, a life-giving church in Santa Monica, California.
We meet in person and online on Sundays at 10 a.m. Our in-person service is held at Joslyn Park Auditorium, which is at 633 Kensington Road.
And our pre-recorded online service can be found on our website, solachurch.life, as well as on both Facebook and YouTube. That's at Sola Church LA.
And we have a great service for you today, so let's worship.
I spoke a word, you were singing over me, and you have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me, and you have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't turn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. And you have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't turn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. find you in the mystery, in oceans deep, my faith will stand, and I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace, for I am yours and you are mine. Grace abounds in deepest waters. Your sovereign hand will be my guide. Where feet may fail and fear surrounds me, you never failed and you won't start now. So I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace, for I am yours and you are mine. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the water wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. And I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace, for I am yours and you are mine.
This is that time in our service when we worship with our giving. If you're just checking us out today, please don't feel obligated to give. But if Sola Church is your church home, or if Sola Church Online has just been a blessing to you, it's super easy to make a one-time tax-deductible donation or even to schedule a recurring gift.
The easiest way is to scan the QR code on your screen, but you can always go to solachurch.life and click the tab at the top that says Give.
Yeah, and I just want to remind you guys that we want to make the online experience as full-orbed as possible, as much like the in-person experience as possible. And to that end, we have small groups, not just for people here on the west side of Los Angeles, but for people watching online, wherever you might be. We meet on Zoom, lasts an hour and 15 minutes, talk about the previous weekend's message with an emphasis on application. It's really, really meaningful, and we'd love for you to be a part of it. So at the end of the service, listen for details about how you can get more information.
Let's get into our time of teaching.
So we are near the end of peak moving season. A few weeks left maybe. Peak moving season is thought to be mid-May to mid-September. And if you are one of those people who are moving this summer, well, you know that relocation stress is a thing. Like before your move, during your move, and after you move, it is so stressful. Let's go ahead and turn in the Bible in Numbers chapter 13. In this series, we're taking relocation as a metaphor for change. We're calling the series Relocation, and we're meeting men and women in the Bible who courageously dealt with change and discovered that there is transformation in relocation. Today, we're going to talk about a man named Moses and the relocation of a nation. So let's talk first about perspective. Numbers 13, beginning in verse 1. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the children of Israel. From each tribe of their fathers you shall send a man, every one a leader among them. So Moses sent them from the wilderness of Paran, according to the command of the Lord, all of them men who were heads of the children of Israel. So we meet Moses, who was, of course, one of the most influential people to have ever lived. When you talk about the Judeo-Christian tradition, I mean, the beliefs, the values, the traditions are first found in the Torah. These first 5 books of the Bible, including Numbers, that were written by Moses. Now, to place him on a timeline, it's like late Bronze Age. To use a really round number, around 1500 BC, Moses was born in Egypt to Hebrew slaves. He was adopted by Pharaoh's daughter. So for 40 years, he grew up as a prince in Egypt, lived, I should say, as a prince in Egypt. One day he saw an Egyptian assaulting a Hebrew slave, and he killed the Egyptian. So he becomes a murderer and a fugitive, and for the next 40 years he lives as a shepherd in Midian until the day that God spoke to Moses from a burning bush, telling him that he was to be a deliverer. He was the one to deliver the Hebrew slaves from Egypt. And if you know the story, you know about the 10 plagues and about the Red Sea crossing, and God gives Moses the 10 commandments. And now, where we pick up our story, they are at Canaan's border with, some estimate, 2 million people. Imagine that. Imagine, overseeing the relocation of 2 million people. And so we see here that Moses is to send spies. Let's jump to verse 17. Then Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan and said to them, Go up this way into the south and go up to the mountains and see what the land is like, whether the people who dwell in it are strong or weak, few or many, whether the land they dwell in is good or bad, whether the cities they inhabit are like camps or strongholds, whether the land is rich or poor, and whether there are forests or not. Be of good courage, and bring some of the fruit of the land. Now the time was the season of the first grapes. So the verses we skipped over, verses 4 through 16, it gives us like the starting lineup. It names the spies, leading off and playing second base, Shamua! Crowd goes nuts. So these spies, they were sent to gather intelligence about the people, about the land, and about the cities. Now here's the thing. They already knew the land was good. In Exodus 3 verse 8, God said so, and repeatedly afterwards, they knew the land was good. So the request is sort of disingenuous, seeking information that they already had. When is more information helpful, and when is it hurtful? Well, I think that seeking more information is helpful when we're decided, when we've already made up our mind that we're going to do what God said no matter what. And I think that seeking more information is hurtful when we're undecided, when we have not yet made up our mind to do whatever God said no matter what. You see, the problem is when we're decided, we're looking for the how-to, but when we're undecided, we're looking for reasons not to. And when you and I are looking for reasons not to do what God said to do, we will always find them. It's that idea that you always find what you're looking for. So no wonder Moses mentions courage in verse 20. I mean, it would take courage regardless, but all the more if they weren't decided. So at the very end, he says, bring some fruit. So random. In the final years of my grandfather's life, if he caught me on my way out the door to run errands, he'd say, Alan, bring me a Hershey bar. And it was so much fun to bring him back a Hershey bar. Like that brought him so much joy. And so that's Moses. He's sending the spies to spy out the land, and then he's kind of like, and bring me a Hershey bar. So verse 26. Now they departed and came back to Moses and Aaron and all the congregation of the children of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. They brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. Then they told him and said, we went to the land where you sent us. It truly flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. Nevertheless, the people who dwell in the land are strong. The cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the south. The Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites dwell in the mountains. And the Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the banks of the Jordan. Then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it. But the men who had gone up with him said, we are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. And they gave the children of Israel a bad report of the land which they had spied out, saying, the land through which we have gone as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants. And all the people whom we saw in it are men of great stature. There we saw giants. The descendants of Anak came from the giants, says parenthetically. And we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, so we were in their sight. Well, the verses we skipped, verses 21 and 25, give us sort of a travelogue. And when they came back from this 40-day foray, well, they had not one but two reports. There was a majority report from 10 spies and a minority report from 2 spies, namely Caleb and Joshua. The majority report, well, in brief, it went like this. We went, it flowed, but. When we went off-roading, Amalekites. When we went mountain biking, Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites. When we went surfing, Canaanites. Not to mention giants, verses 28 and 33. 5 centuries later, Goliath would measure at 9.5 feet tall. So, yeah, giants. The bottom line, verse 31, not able. But the minority report, verse 30, well able. So 10 guys are like, no way, and 2 guys are like, way. It's funny when you think about it because they were on the same sightseeing tour in the same full-sized van, looking through the same windshield at the same points of interest, but with a completely different perspective. In life, it's all how you look at things. The 10, they saw big giants, and therefore their God was small to them. But the 2, their God was big to them, and so they saw the giants as small. Do you have giants in your life? Like, it could be anything. It could be addiction. It could be a bad habit. It could be a chronic illness. It could be debt or legal trouble. It could be a failing marriage. It could be hate or lust. Whatever it might be. God is bigger than your giants. To Caleb and Joshua, the only giant was God. Like, if we could have interviewed them, we would ask, were there giants? And they would have said, only one. Only God. So they weren't just 2 out of 12, they were 2 out of 2 million, or to put it another way, literally 1 in a million. Their perspective was a 1 in a million perspective. How about you? What's your perspective? Do you have a 1 in a million perspective? So, Moses talked about perspective, let's talk about introspective. So moving into chapter 14, beginning in verse 1. So all the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron. And the whole congregation said to them, if only we had died in the land of Egypt, or if only we had died in this wilderness. Why has the Lord brought us to this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and children should become victims? Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt?" So they said to one another, "Let us select a leader and return to Egypt." Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of the children of Israel. So you notice in verse 2 it says that they complained. I heard about a guy that decided to become a monk and join a monastery. And this was the kind of monastery where you had to take a vow of silence. So that meant that, he had to be silent for a year. And then on his anniversary, he got 2 words. So he did his first year. And on his anniversary, he got his 2 words. He said, "Bed hard." He did a second year. And on his anniversary, he said, "Food bad." He did a 3rd year. And on his anniversary, he said, "I quit." To which they responded, "Good, you've done nothing but complain since you got here." Oh man, if we had begun reading together in Exodus and read all the way through to this point in number, we would see that the people had complained over and over and over again. There's no way out. There's nothing to drink. There's nothing to eat. They were masters of the obvious. When dealing with change, we have to make a conscious effort to be positive. If you're dealing with change right now, and when I'm dealing with change, there's going to be a gravitational pull toward being negative. We have to make the effort to be positive. Picking it up in verse 6, "But Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes. And they spoke to all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, 'The land we passed through to spy on,'" or to spy out, that is "an exceedingly good land. If the Lord delights in us, then he will bring us into the land and give it to us, a land which flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, nor fear the people of the land, for they are our bread. Their protection has departed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them." And all the congregation said to stone them with stones. Now the glory of the Lord appeared in the tabernacle of meeting before all the children of Israel. Well, it's all how you look at things. In the first point, perspective is all about looking through the windshield at God. How do you see God? Do you see him as big or small? But introspective is all about pulling down the visor and looking at yourself in the vanity mirror. How do you see yourself? The 10, the majority, in verse 33, they essentially said, compared to the giants, we're grasshoppers. But to the 2, the minority, they essentially said in chapter 14, verse 9, compared to God, it's a piece of cake. So you have grasshoppers on the one hand and cake eaters on the other. Grasshoppers are people who don't see themselves in God. And because they don't, they live in fear. But cake eaters are people who do see themselves in God. And because they do, they operate from a place of faith. How do you see yourself? As a grasshopper or as a cake eater? Picking it up in verse 26, it says, "And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, 'How long shall I bear with this evil congregation who complain against me? I have heard the complaints which the children of Israel make against me. Say to them, As I live, says the Lord, just as you have spoken in my hearing, so I will do to you. The carcasses of you who have complained against me shall fall in the wilderness. All of you who are numbered, according to your entire number, from 20 years old and above, except for Caleb the son of Jephunneh and Joshua the son of Nun, you shall by no means enter the land, which I swore I would give to you, which I swore to make you, I would make you dwell in, But your little ones whom you said would be victims, I will bring in, and they shall know the land which you have despised. But as for you, your carcasses shall fall in this wilderness, and your sons shall be shepherds in the wilderness 40 years, and bear the brunt of your infidelity, until your carcasses are consumed in the wilderness, according to the number of the days in which you spied out the land, 40 days. For each day you shall bear your guilt 1 year, namely 40 years, and you shall know my rejection. I, the Lord, have spoken this. I will surely do so to all this evil congregation who are gathered together against me in this wilderness. They shall be consumed, and there they shall die. Now the men to whom Moses sent to spy out the land, who returned and made all the congregation complain against him by bringing a bad report of the land, those very men who brought the evil report about the land died by the plague before the Lord. But Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh remained alive of the men who went to spy out the land. And so, citing God's patience and mercy, Moses prays for their forgiveness in the verses that we skipped over, verses 11 to 25. And then the answer comes here in verse 26. And believe it or not, the answer is merciful. I mean, rather than all of them dying, with the exception of the 10 spies, they would live out their natural lives, only they would do it in the wilderness. They wouldn't do it in the land that God was giving to their descendants. So basically what they got was a 40-year sentence with time served. Now, we could do the math. We've done it before. You know, if there were 2 million people, perhaps there were 1.2 million adults. They had to wait, for all of this generation to die off over that 40 years. So it works out to about 30,000 per year, or about 2,500 per month, about 85 per day. If we figure they had about 12 hours of daylight to bury people, it means that every day they were burying about 7 people per hour. 7 people, their bodies sliding under the sand every hour for 40 years. How hard was it for Caleb and Joshua to endure this? I mean, this was due to no fault of their own, and it could be that you're dealing with unwanted change in your life that is due to no fault of your own. These guys would survive and go into the land. They would. Keep that in mind. And they would do so because they saw themselves as cake eaters rather than grasshoppers. So we're talking about Moses, we've talked about perspective, we've talked about introspective. Let's talk now about retrospective. We're picking it up in verse 39. Then Moses told these words to all the children of Israel, and the people mourned greatly. And they rose early in the morning and went up to the top of the mountain, saying, "Here we are, and we will go up to the place which the Lord has promised, for we have sinned." Oh, man. Oh. Think about things that you regret. Like, have you ever colored your hair and regretted it? Or maybe gotten a haircut and regretted it? That might be even worse. Color can usually be fixed. You get a bad haircut, you might live with it for a while. Have you ever gotten a piercing or a tattoo and lived to regret it? Have you ever been in a relationship and lived to regret it? Like you knew better. But even bigger picture, have you ever messed up so bad that you thought it was over for you? Like you were sure that you would be expelled or fired or divorced or arrested or dead. And even if the worst case scenario didn't play out, you knew that things would never be the same for you, that somehow you had forever changed the trajectory of your life. That's how they felt. That sick feeling. You know, the way we feel after we've really messed up. What if we could feel that way before we really messed up? What if before we make the mistake, we could borrow a little bit of that angst to the degree that we would choose not to make that mistake? How much better would it be to feel it before rather than after? I wonder sometimes if that's what the Bible means when it says in 3 places that we are to hate evil. Instead of coming to the end of bad decisions and bad living and tearfully saying, "I hate this," feeling that way before, making a different choice. Picking it up in verse 41, and Moses said, "Now why do you transgress the command of the Lord? For this will not succeed. Do not go up, lest you be defeated by your enemies. For the Lord is not among you. For the Amalekites and the Canaanites are there before you, and you shall fall by the sword. Because you have turned away from the Lord will not be with you." but they presumed to go up to the mountaintop. Nevertheless, neither the Ark of the Covenant, this furnishing from their place of worship called the tabernacle, of the Lord, nor Moses, their leader, departed from the camp. Then the Amalekites and the Canaanites who dwelt in that mountain came down and attacked them and drove them back as far as Hormah. So relocation, it's about looking forward through the windshield. It's about looking inward at the vanity mirror in the back of the visor. And it's about looking backward in the rearview mirror. As you look back, as I look back at different things in our lives, sometimes we regret listening. Sometimes we listen to the majority, but you know what? The majority is not always right. The majority is often wrong. It's funny how we talk about some kind of conventional wisdom as if it were law. We say things like this to each other, like they say this or they say that. Someone called it the sway of they. Like, who is they? Where is this think tank? How are they telepathically communicating with us? Like, what? What would you do today if you weren't afraid of what people were going to think, of what people were going to say? If you want to look back on your life with regret, just keep listening to they. But sometimes it's not necessarily that we regret listening. Instead, it's that we regret being listened to. You know, later in the book of Joshua, Caleb is reflecting on this experience. Caleb, one of the two good spies. And he talks about the way the people responded to the bad spies. And he says that the bad spies made the hearts of the people melt. We have influence, you and I. Our words have weight. We have the ability with the things that we say to bring people up or to bring people down. You want to look back with regret on seasons in your life? Just be one voice with they. Just join the chorus of they. So talking about Moses today, we've talked about perspective, introspective, and retrospective. You know, this decision to go in after the window had closed and God wasn't going with them, it was almost like they were doing penance. It's funny because we punish people, and because people punish us, we assume that God punishes us, and we think that maybe God won't punish us if we punish ourselves. In the Bible, it doesn't tell us that God punishes us. It tells us that He disciplines us. It's different. And when God disciplines us, He always does it with grace. How did He show them grace? Well, these years they would spend in the wilderness during the day, God would be present with them in a cloud that provided shade. And at night, He would be present with them in a fire that provided warmth. And if you and I find ourselves as part of an extended season of change, wanted or unwanted, a relocation of sorts, well, God's going to be gracious to us as well. Look for the clouds in your life. Look for the fires in your life, the shade and the warmth that will speak to you about God's grace. But taking the whole lesson into consideration, if only I could see God as bigger than my giants. As a result, I would see myself as bigger than my giants. And then you and me, we together, we could experience transformation in relocation. Father, as always, we're so grateful for the Bible, for these stories that resonate with us. And as we reflect on them, help us to see ourselves and help us to think in new ways about you and about your workings in our lives. Lord, we're probably all in the midst of a relocation of one kind or another. Life is so filled with change. Some of that change is unwanted. It's hard. And maybe someone watching this online service feels discouraged, feels like they're in the wilderness with no end in sight. Father, I just pray that today you would give us eyes to see the clouds, give us eyes to see the fires. Help us to find those shady spots, those warm places. Help us to experience your grace in the midst of it all and to know that you're with us, that you're for us, that you're transforming us. In the name of your Son, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
And now it's time to fill out a Connect card.
Yeah, you can go to our website, solachurch.life, scroll to the bottom of the homepage. That's where the Connect card lives. It's your way of letting us know that you attended online today. And also, that's where you can request information about the online small groups we talked about before.
And just a reminder, go and follow Sola Church on social media.
Yeah, for sure. At Sola Church LA. Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. Yeah.
Everything. We're everywhere.
That's right.
And we hope everyone has a great week. And we will see you next time at Sola Church Online.
Bye, everybody.